What am I doing with my hands? Hi everyone, and welcome back to Big City B. I'm B for those of you who are just joining me for the first time. Today's book review is going to be The Gilda Stories by Jewelle Gomez. For the basics for this book, the genre is going to be historical fiction with LGBTQ vampires. Yes, you heard that right. For trigger warnings, make sure you check out down below in the description. Alrighty, here's your summary. Escaping from slavery in the 1850s, Gilda's longing for kinship and community grows over 200 years. Her induction into a family of benevolent vampires takes her on an adventurous and dangerous journey. Alrighty, on to our characters for this book. For track 1, we have Gilda. Well, that makes sense since the book's named after her. For track 2, we have Bird, Sorrel, and Anthony. For track 3, we have Samuel and Eleanor. And for track 4, we have the original Gilda. Yes, there are 2 Gildas in this story. No, it's not confusing because one is track 1, so you'll very obviously know her, and the other is track 4, so she's only in the story a little bit. The first thing that I liked about this book was moving through the different time periods in this book. We start in the 1850s and move all the way up to the future, some unknown time that's outlined in the book. So it's definitely further in the future than present day. But something that I've noticed in the recent historical fiction books that I've been reading is that I like the jumps through time. While I do like historical fiction books that stay in one time period, such as Opium and Absinthe, I also like when we're jumping around and I get to see a little bit of different eras all over the place, such as with this one in the Gilda Stories, also All the Bad Apples, and The Fortune Teller. The second thing that I liked about this book was the strong female influences that Gilda passes on to all of the people that she meets throughout the book. Gilda takes the trials and tribulations that she's had in her past and passes on that strength that she's gained to these other new generations of women who may be struggling either because of the time period or in their confidence of themselves, and passes along that strength so they don't have to necessarily have all of these struggles to get there. The third thing that I liked about this book was the lesbian relationships within this book were not over-sexualized, which is fantastic because often I find that books that have lesbian relationships are overly sexualized, especially when written by a man. But Jewelle Gomez is a woman. While there were some sexual scenes, there was nothing that I felt was overly sexualized. So that was something that I enjoyed reading, something that was a little bit more realistic to relationships. And I'm not saying that like a lesbian relationship can't be super sexual and hot and sexy, but that's not all the relationship is. And in this book, we definitely see those caring, tender moments in the relationships within the story. Let's go on to things that I didn't like about this book. The first thing, and really the only thing that I didn't like about this book, was I felt like whatever villain we had in this story was cut way too short before we could really see them turn into any kind of major conflict or present any kind of evil to the main character. I don't necessarily think that you need a villain within the story, but Jewelle set it up in such a way where 2 characters can possibly be the villain, and yet they're never really realized. They're put out there as being not as good as the other characters in the book, but it never leads anywhere. We do have a third villain that appears at the end of the book where a little bit more of a fight breaks out between him and the other characters of that time period. But again, it feels like it went too quickly. I would have liked a little bit more of a build within those conflicts for Gilda. Let's go on over to our Goodreads takes. It was a little difficult to find Goodreads takes for this book because it did come out a while back. But the first and main problem people had with it was that it was boring. They said that the book had too much exposition and chapters that were 40 to 50 pages could have been cut down to 10. While I do think some of these chapters were on the longer side, I don't feel like any information should have been cut out of the book. The way that Jewelle wrote this, it's the journey of Gilda's life and her vampire life of the undead, if you want to call it that. And every little experience is important for her, but then also we see over the passage of time how things tend to fade and aren't as important as they used to be. So I don't think there was anything that needed to be cut out of this book. The second thing that Goodreads didn't like was that they said that the homosexual relationships, which I don't think is the word that they really wanted to use, but anyway, that they were over-sexualized, depraved, and creepy. Because I can't identify with that, maybe that's not my place to say that. So if you've read the Gilda Stories and you are part of the LGBTQ community, let me know down in the comments if you thought these relationships were depraved and creepy. But I thought for the most part they were just normal, caring, loving relationships. But maybe my own relationships are depraved and creepy, I don't know. The third thing that Goodreads didn't like was that they said that this book tried to be too many things. They said this book was trying to be a culmination of 5 different genres and it didn't succeed. I don't think this book was trying to be 5 different genres. We have historical fiction because we're going through different time periods and it's fake. And then we have LGBTQ because there is LGBTQ representation in this book. And then we have vampires because they're vampires. So I don't think there was any genre in here. Maybe towards the end of the book is what they're talking about, because then we start to, at that point, then we start to get into a different genre. So that leads me to a spoiler section. I have a question for you if you've read this book, and just something that I was kind of thinking about, and we can also talk about this last Goodreads take. So let's go to the spoilers. So at the end of the book, we are in the future where the human race is not doing too great. They know about the existence of vampires now. They are actively trying to capture vampires and make themselves, the humans, vampires so that they can live longer. But it seems like, why would you want to do that if humanity and the world is falling apart? Why would you want to live longer? Anyway, that's where I think that last Goodreads takes was going, because in the future section, it does seem to go into a kind of dystopian, almost sci-fi-like genre. It toes the line a little bit on that dystopian line, but then backs away, and that's all we really get for it. So for me, that genre, it wasn't there. But also with the spoilers, I was thinking, so if all the humans are dying out, they're dying, can the vampire, like, what are the vampires gonna do? They still need to drink blood. So can they drink blood of animals? Like, I don't understand why that wasn't a thing that could be done at the beginning of the book. So that's just something I was thinking about. What are they gonna do? Does that mean that the vampires are gonna die too and just the whole world will be empty of either vampires or humans? I don't know. Let's go on to my quotes for this book. Quote number 1, and the only quote. I think the most important thing for you to do in the meantime is to live. It's a very involving job and takes concentration and practice. I like this quote because often we can get caught up on one thing and put our lives on hold instead of continuing on with our life and exploring different aspects. So a nice little reminder to redirect your energy from the things that might have caught you up in life and focusing on living. Lastly, would I recommend this book? Yes, I would recommend this book. Even though some of the chapters were quite long, I felt like in some ways that made the book go quicker. The book is split up into, I think, 3 different parts. Ugh. 3 or 4 different parts. And through those different parts, we go through different time periods, we meet different people that Gilda meets, we see Gilda develop relationships or potential relationships and kind of fight with that duality of being an immortal vampire, but also wanting to maintain some of her humanity and how to connect with the humans of those different generations. And I like this book. I want to be more eloquent with why I like this book, but I'm not finding the words right now. So you're gonna have to dive into the book yourself and make your own decision. Alrighty everyone, that's all I have for you this week. If you like this video, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button and make sure you're subscribed for future videos. Leave a comment down below if you would trade in your humanity to be an immortal vampire. Alrighty everyone, all the best always. Bye!